Yeah, just a quick review, the CanDo Slim Weight Bar. These come in a bunch of different weights, and the different weights are color coded. And I think it starts out with 1 pound, and then it goes like one, 1.5, two, 2.5, three, 3.5, and so on. I believe they go all the way up to 10 pounds, which is a pretty good amount of weight. So basically, in a nutshell, in its purest form, this is a weighted exercise bar, and there's just a ton of things you can do with it. Which means since it's weighted, it's primarily used for strengthening. Not that you can't really use it for like some active assisted range of motion exercises. For instance, you can grab it with both hands, and like your good arm could help stretch out the bad arm. You can push it around, so you could use it for that too if one of the lighter weights. Basically, this is used for strengthening. A lot of people are using these for their shoulder, and the lighter ones you can grab the thing with both hands, and you can also move it around, and stretch out as well. But basically, this is just for a strengthening tool. One other thing I want to add is that if you have like a rotator cuff problem, you're trying to rehab your shoulder, one other good resource you might want to consider is the 6-minute torn rotator cuff solution. It says for seniors, but actually athletes can use this. Even if you have shoulder problem in general, strengthening the rotator cuff will go a long way in fixing a lot of different shoulder problems. That's because the shoulder is basically a shallow ball and socket joint, and it depends heavily on the muscles to stabilize it. It's not like the hip, which is also a ball and socket joint, but it's a deep one, so it doesn't need as much muscles to support it and keep it where it's supposed to be. Rotator cuff is really the main group of muscles that stabilizes your shoulder joint. So if you really strengthen the rotator cuff and you get good stability, a lot of problems go away, like impingement syndrome, bursitis, or even arthritic symptoms, because you're just getting more stability in there, and there's just less irritation in your shoulder. So even if you don't have a specific rotator cuff tear, this little 6-minute program is a good one to use for that. What exactly is a rotator cuff? It goes into that, the group of 4 muscles. Lots of pictures. If you're a visual learner, you'll like it. It's not really dry reading. Answers you need to know. So if you tear your rotator cuff, this answers just about every question you'd have. What are the symptoms of a rotator cuff tear? Any arm maneuvers that might indicate I have a tear? What imaging tests are used? Where does it tear at? Are there different kinds of rotator cuff tears? Here's a good one. I have a rotator cuff tear and I'm in a lot of pain. I need surgery, right? So, not necessarily. Let me tell you why. This is a very evidence-based book. Each one of these is a study. It's in layman's terms, so it's easy to understand. So they answer this question by looking at the studies where, say, they take 100 people that have a rotator cuff tear, and they would go ahead and measure, how big the tear is, and then they also run something like a visual analog scale and see how much pain they're in. So now you have a group of people, how big their tear is and how much pain they're in. You're looking for correlations. Well, what they find, there's actually a lot of people walking around that have asymptomatic rotator cuff tears. In other words, and there are lots of studies actually to support this, many, many studies. There are people walking around that have a tear and they have no pain. So if you go to the doctor, your shoulder hurts, you end up having an MRI, it shows a rotator cuff tear, oh, that's my problem, I gotta have surgery. Well, not necessarily, because you could have an asymptomatic rotator cuff tear and something else is really causing the pain. So that's why you don't want to jump into a rotator cuff repair. What will happen if I leave my rotator cuff tear alone? Best way to answer that is look at these studies where they take a group of people that for some reason or another didn't have any, they have a rotator cuff tear, and for some reason or other they just don't get any treatment. And then you follow them over time, and you see what happens. Basically they left it alone. Did it get better? Did it repair itself? What happened? How does exercise compare to surgery when it comes to treating a torn rotator cuff? Okay, so the only way you can really answer that scientifically is by looking at the randomized controlled trials. That's the highest form of proof in medicine that a treatment is actually effective. So here again, you take, say, 100 people with a rotator cuff tear, 50 you'd randomly assign to surgery, and the other 50 you'd randomly assign to an exercise program. And you follow them over time, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years. So let's say in a year, who did better, the people that had the rotator cuff repair or the people that did the good exercise program? Basically, long story short, according to the randomized controlled trials, you end up at the same place. So it has an exercise program. There's 3 different levels depending on where you're at, and really it does take 6 minutes or less. So if you need more resources for that, for your rotator cuff, because I know a lot of people are going to be using the shoulder wand, for that, I think this is a good resource. But yeah, if you're just looking for, just a weighted bar, this is, I think, one of the good ones out there. So definitely check it out.